Welcome to the iPhoneography Podcast. I'm Greg McMillan, and we have a pretty interesting show tonight, I think. I guess before we start, though, we'll bring in these guys. And Scott Baker says 30 seconds, probably because we started 30 seconds late. So
We needed,
it's,
we wanted to see if we could do a non-exposure for 30 seconds.
well, we wanted that, and we wanted to see if there's actually anybody in there that would pipe up and say, hey, let's go. Sure enough, there he is. But yeah, so a couple of things that we're going to talk about tonight. I think quickly, first, what we'll do is, so I put a teaser post on the Facebook group about, there's something new. And it is, you know what, I will just bring it in right now, our new website. So we've been kind of using the Facebook page as our website, and we'll continue to use that because sometimes the people are on Facebook and they just want to stay there. And Stephen Just is here from Southampton, not too far from here. Hi, Stephen. But I think, and there's Jeffrey McDonald too. Hey, Jeff. These guys are just popping into the chat here. I think a podcast deserves an actual website. So I've had this kind of in the works for a long time, and it just sat there, barely started. And I thought, you know what? Now that I'm retired, I'm going to actually finish it. So I've done that. And, we're not going to, there's not a whole lot really just yet to look at here, but I went with a dark theme. I think a dark theme looks good on a website, especially if there's ever going to be images on here, which ultimately there will be at some point. But it's this here. It's got an ode to Leo here behind Dave. If you're on the website, you'll be able to see it a little better. This is just a screenshot from one of the shows, and it has Leo in the background with Dave there. And so that thumbnail that we put on YouTube, I put on there, your name could be here, because we love having guests. We've had a few, 3 in a row actually, and we always have a great time when we have a guest on the show. So, please, it says here, contact us if interested. So, and then it's got about the show. So here's the first part of that page. So if you click on read more, it takes you to the about page. And it's about the podcast, kind of how it got started, and how Dave and I come over from Tiny Shutter, and how Dwight come in, and it's just an about page, typical about page. The blog, this is where things are going to happen. So as you can see here, here's a little teaser for the people on YouTube of what we're going to talk about shortly. But I've got a blog post here. I thought I would put on from my original blog, and is the iPhone camera a real camera? So if you haven't read that, it might be an interesting read for you. And then, of course, we got a contact page where you can put in your name and email. They're required. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to save your email. It just means that it's a legitimate query that we will react to. And then you see here, there's a learn page. Now this is Mike James from Australia. He's a good friend of the show. He helped me a fair bit in the production of my book in some ways, and I thought I owed it to him to keep this on. I kind of had this. Where did I have this before? I had this somewhere. But anyway, I thought I would put this in here because when you hit the button down here for the Smartphone Photography Club, don't be confused with anything that you have to pay for, because if you hit that, it takes you to his website, and it says, watch now, free mobile photography course, no sign up required. And there's a YouTube video here, and I think it's about an hour or so long, where he takes you through some, camera features, capture techniques, things like that. So, and then he's got other links up here that, his composition book is absolutely amazing. I mean, it's so thoroughly written. It's crazy. But anyway, so I wanted to put that in there because I appreciate what he did for me in the production of my book. And then, of course, back to the homepage. So there's not a lot there yet, but I think as the time goes on, we will see that grow and populate a little bit. I will probably put our show notes in there. Oh, wait a minute, there was one other page I didn't get to yet, the podcast page, which is probably the most important. So on this page, you will see the 10 latest episodes in a podcast player. So you can hit the play button and listen to the episode right on the website and, open another tab and carry on with what you're doing if you like. And the show notes will be, I'll probably have to make a page for the show notes, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to try to keep everything here, but there's also a link to our Facebook page if you want to see the things on Facebook that we've posted in the past. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And I'm glad that it's finally built. There's links here to the YouTube channel right on the homepage, a link to the Apple Podcast feed, Spotify feed, Pocket Casts, and the RSS feed. So, it's I can't say it's a work in progress because I think it's pretty much done other than just adding to it now as time goes by. So, but yeah, I just thought it'd be nice to have an actual website for the show instead of, just a Facebook group. And the URL is what, like you see under my name here, iphonography.ca. That used to take you to the podcast Facebook page, but it now directs you to here. And because this is I paid to get this website, like I pay for the website, not the free version, it's wicked fast. Page loading is crazy good. So I hope your viewing experience on the website is anything but bad. I hope it's just a pleasure to view it, because it's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. So that's the website. So now we're going to talk about, like, it's no secret that my favorite camera app is Reeflex. It's always been because the design is I just love the design of it, the way it's laid out. Everything is there right in front of you. It's just really well thought out. And now they're coming out with version 3. And so we're going to kind of give it a bit of a review. And I have some screenshots that we'll put up on the screen while we're talking about these different elements. Right now it's in beta, and there's no word on any cost or anything, like whether it's a paid upgrade or anything like that. We have no clue about any of that stuff. All we can say is that it's coming out on April 2nd. That much we do know. But it's really well designed. It's kind of, it's kind of like iOS 26. It's a new look with a lot of familiar stuff under the hood. But it's really fast. It's, the guys did a great job with the code, and, because this is a beta version, I found a little bug here and there, but those will likely be fixed before the final release comes out in the App Store. So, but anyway, so let's get to the first screenshot here, liquid glass. So the team has put in liquid glass in this version, and I want to get my notes up because I don't want to.
Oh, and Greg, while you're bringing that up,
Dave, you just jump in by all means. Yeah,
I saw regarding liquid glass, which I know is a very divisive thing in the last year, where so many people hate it. And I saw an interview with someone at one of the Apple studios in New York, and they were asked about liquid glass, and so how some developers are trying to hold off. Maybe Apple changed its mind, and they said, no, this is like iOS 7. The jump from iOS 6 to 7, this is exactly what we did this time. So if you don't like liquid glass, there will be tweaks. There will be maybe some improvement, just like iOS 7 went so freaking minimalistic, you couldn't figure out where the button is, and it adjusted over time. Liquid glass is here to stay. You have the content and you have the stuff on top of the content. That's the way they want everything to look. So them going with liquid glass, where you could have some people say, oh, they're going with liquid glass. Why can't Apple's going this way? Again, the 26.4, which is due out this week sometime, It doesn't sound like this is going to have the new...
I'm going to guess tomorrow.
This probably not going to have the newest and greatest Siri baked in, the AI-based Siri.
No.
But that was the early rumor at one time. But in this case, there's going to be tweaks to the liquid glass to make it a little less distracting. But the fact that they decided to go with the liquid glass is a great idea, because this is how Apple... And within a year or so, you'll be able to say, oh, that looks old. That looks different. That doesn't look like everything else, because someone decided not to go with the liquid glass.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the liquid glass myself, or at least I'm not an early adopter of it. It's going to take a little while for me to get used to it, but I know there's ways in accessibility that you can kind of make things a little less transparent and stuff. So I haven't quite done that yet. I'm trying to get used to it. I'm sure I'll get there.
Now, I wonder if that will work in an app like Reeflex, like in that picture there, the histogram. I like liquid glass. I really like it. I'm all for it, and I have it like as clear as I can get it. Not that you can go clear or opaque in the settings. So I have it on clear because I like it. Hey, I was ready for a change. I don't know how many years ago now from iOS 7. And so I was happy to see that they put it in. But yes, there are a lot of people who don't care for it, and that's fine.
To answer your question, Greg, you can affect it system-wide by updating the accessibility.
Okay, because I just tried it. I just went into the display settings and turned it from clear to opaque.
Yeah, that doesn't do it.
I didn't really see much of a difference. No. Right. Okay. So Stephen just says there's a clear and tinted option now in 26.3.1. Yeah, but it's the system-wide one that has to be done. Okay. So I mean, if you don't like the liquid glass, you can do that in the accessibility options and so that it's not so clear. But I like it. It's a new look. I think it helps with the viewfinder. Like when you got something in the viewfinder like that, I think it helps with the, with seeing the scene that you're doing, right? And the other place where it's really predominant is in the camera picker, the camera selection at the bottom of the viewfinder. Reeflex used to have a button that you toggle through the cameras, and it didn't have the additional focal lengths like the 2x and in the or the 5x or the 10x or the 8x. It didn't have those options, but now they do. So that little camera selector at the bottom of the viewfinder, it's in. I keep it in liquid glass so you can kind of see through it a little bit too. I mean, it's still there, and it kind of obstructs the view a little bit, but being clear like that, it's not as bad, in my opinion. So let's see, what else do we have? So yeah, there's the camera selector. Now, if you're looking on your podcast app, these images are hopefully going to show up good enough that you can see what we're talking about here. But on the YouTube channel, they're pretty good to see. But yeah, you got your camera selector, and this is where they got kind of changed things up a little bit here. And I might be bouncing around here because what I'm doing is I'm looking at the blog post that I just released at 7:30 tonight. If you want to see the blog post, it's at iphonography.ca, and it's in the blog roll, and that's where you can see these pictures if you're listening live. So you've got your camera selectors, and then in the corners of the viewfinder, they've added icons for the histogram on the lower right and the zebra stripes on the lower left. These were not as accessible, I don't think, with the last version. Now you just tap it, bang, there it is. And then with the histogram, when the histogram pops up at the top, you can just touch the histogram and go from
HSL.
You can go to HSL or not HSL, but the RGB.
That's right.
Brightness. You can go from brightness to RGB. So you got two choices for histogram. I think it was like that before too. So that's histogram with zebra stripes. And then you've got the same row that we had before with the ISO, the shutter speed, the EV, the multi or manual focus, and the white balance. Those are pretty much unchanged in their location and how they work. But below them, you've got what I call a mode selection row. That's kind of the name I've given it, is mode selection row, where you've got so on the left you've got the slow shutter icon. Then you've got on the far right you've got your switcher between the back cameras and the selfie camera, and then you've got a couple of new icons, and we're going to get to them in a minute. But the slow shutter one, I wanted to touch on it because if you go to the next image here, the slow shutter icon now just opens up a scale right there in that where that row was, and it's kind of like the other apps that they have, like Re-Expose and Re-Held, in that it has, a scale that you slide your finger back and forth to select the length of time that you want your exposure to go. And then over on the right, you've got, it looks like clouds in this picture. Well, that's for motion blur. If you tap on the clouds, it switches over to the stars for star trails, and that's how you switch back and forth between those two modes. So it's very well thought out. It's very quick to get to where you want. And then when you're done with slow shutter, you just tap that slow shutter icon again, and that row returns to normal. Before, in the older version, when you tapped slow shutter, you had this thing pop up in the viewfinder, and I had to ask the Reeflex guys, how does this work? Because it was not as intuitive, and you had to slide your finger up and down to change your exposure time. Well, at least this way you've got, a nice scale that you can slide back and forth on. So I think it's a great change that they've made with the motion blur feature. So now we get to those other two icons, and the first one beside the slow shutter icon is focus stacking. This is something that I've seen a lot of people ask about, in groups and in places like that. They want to be able to do focus stacking. Focus stacking is you can set the minimum and the maximum focus distance for your scene. This works great in macros or in landscapes when you've got something really close that you want in focus and something really far away that you want in focus. Now, I know the iPhone camera does a pretty good job of, getting a lot of that in focus, but especially with macro, with a lens, it's got such a shallow depth of field. This really works well. So anyway, you can pick your minimum and maximum focus. So your focus sliders there, the two dots, one on each side, it would go to, I'm not sure if it's 0 on the low end scale. Yeah, it goes from 0, and then the other one goes up to 1. And that's kind of like, if you look right above it on the manual focus slider, it says 0.28. Well, the manual focus goes from 0 to 1. And, I think for something like astrophotography, I think 0.82 is basically right into the sweet spot for stars and stuff. And then there's some numbers up there in the top right part of this section. You can see on the screenshot, it says like 7, 8, and 9. That goes from, that selects the number of shots you want to take in your stack. Mm-hmm. So you can go from 3 all the way up to 100 shots. And what happens is when you start your sequence of shots, it'll take a picture starting at, I think, maybe the near focus part. Then it'll go to the next focus. So what it do, it's going to shoot, adjust focus, shoot, adjust focus, shoot, adjust focus. And it's going to take however many shots you pick to take, and it's going to pick the focus range between the minimum and the maximum, divide them evenly up or whatever, and you're going to have a different part of the scene with with all these different focus points. And then what you can do is you can say select the best one that you like for whatever's in focus, or you can use focus stacking software to put them all together and get a scene that is completely in focus from one end to the other. Like I say, it works great in macro because with a macro lens, the depth of field is so small, it's so shallow that this is why people have been asking for this, I think, is because they want to be able to get more of their, say, a flower in focus, in sharp focus. So I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm looking forward to it. We don't have many flowers here yet. It's too early in the spring. We're still in like sticky mud season, I guess you can call it. But I'm looking forward to trying that out.
The best scenario for this would be on a tripod, right? I mean, like Photoshop, you can take the 10 or 100 photos and it will auto align it. I think even if you're handheld, but I would think that being on a tripod here would be the best.
Yeah, I think it would work the best. I mean, especially with something like a macro shot, because the slightest movement will move that your subject, too far to line up. Now, one thing to be mindful of is a thing called focus breathing, and what that is the lens in any camera when you're adjusting focus will change. It will change the size of your subject. And it's really predominant in macro, but it'll change the size of your subject one way or the other, like when you're going near to far or far to near. But the software will compensate for that. Like if you got good software, I did it in Affinity Photo one time, and it worked out really well. So it's not a real big issue, but just be mindful that focus breathing is something that happens, and you can't get away from it. It just happens,
Greg, I have
right?
a question for you. So let's say we're focused on a B.
Yep.
And you pick 20 exposures or 20 shots or whatever, and you hit the shutter button. Does it capture all of the information at once, or is it sequential? Because if that B moves, you're going to lose it out of the shot.
Yeah, you pretty much want to do, if you're going to do a B, you want to make sure he's dead. Or if he's very docile and he's just sitting there, you might have a shot at getting it all, but it takes a shot and then adjusts the focus and then takes a shot and then adjusts the focus. So yeah, it does it in a sequence. It's not something that happens very quickly. And the more shots you put in your sequence, the longer it's going to take. So that's something to be mindful of as well. And Maurice says, the focus stock is a welcome feature. Camera Pixels had it, but nice to have another option. And Dwight, you said there was another app that you thought had it too at one? Aurora HDR or
HDR, I believe, has it, yeah.
Aura
HDR, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit gimmicky for me, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I say that's the one when you were going over that in terms of the 0.28 to 0.72. I wasn't sure if that was something like meters or feet or
that's like 0 to 1 is your limit.
Okay.
So 0 is the closest to you and 1 is the furthest away.
Okay.
So I don't know if that directly relates to anything from a measurement standpoint.
It doesn't sound like it.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It's just a reference, I guess you could say. So if you set it at from say 0.5 to 1, then you're going to get half. So it's the furthest one. The 1 is going to be as far away as you can get, the furthest you could focus on, and then the 0.5 is going to be halfway between you and the furthest point.
So if you're doing landscape, if you're doing landscape, that literally could be infinity.
Yeah.
All the way in.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So exposure bracketing. So this gives you 3 shots. When you set this up and turn this on, it'll take 3 shots. It'll underexpose, give you the proper exposure, and then overexpose. So this is how people used to do HDR images before these before the iPhone started implementing in the camera system. And mobile photographers never really did this much before, but it was more for the dedicated cameras. But it works really well in an iPhone as well. I think where this will really shine is if you're shooting Bay or RAW, but I mean it does work in the other formats like Hike and JPEG and ProRAW. So what you do is you can set your exposure with your your ISO, your shutter speed, and your EV. You can use those to set your exposure where you think it would be perfect or where you think you want it. But then with these little brackets down here, you can go anywhere from a half a stop to -4 stops, underexposed, and the same on the overexposure side.
Okay, so it is the same on either side then.
Well, no, you can take the underexposure. Yeah. You can go to -3, and the overexposure you can just go to 1 if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very flexible that way. But you can't take the overexposure beyond like half a stop here. You can't take it into the minus side as well.
You have
for
to go
obvious
on
reasons.
Either side, otherwise there's no use to do it.
Right. Those two values are going to split whatever your EV value is.
Yeah. So the EV in the center That just represents what you set now, whether it's auto or you've set it manually with your manual exposure settings up above. But once you got it set, that's where your exposure value is. And then you can take a shot here. Say if you set the underexposure to -4 and then your overexposure to say +1, what it'll do is it'll take a shot that's -4 stops underexposed, so it's going to be kind of dark. The second shot's going to be whatever your EV is, whatever your exposure is at. And then the third shot is going to be overexposed by whatever you set it here. So in that example, like if you set it at +1, it's going to be overexposed by 1 stop. And you can take those 3 images and pick the one you like, or you can put it into some software like Photoshop or any software that can blend with layers. You can blend the 3 together. You can mask out the overexposed stuff that's too bright, the underexposed stuff that's too dark, and you can come up with, a well-exposed HDR picture. I mean, that's basically the whole purpose of it. Mm-hmm. Or you could just use that tool to
find a global shot that you like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, because with these sensors nowadays, you can underexpose a ton and you can get that back in post. But if you overexpose to the point where the data is gone, then there's no getting it back. It has to be very, very minimally overexposed in order to get some of that back. And then, of course, you're talking RAW there too. But again, this works in all the formats. So yeah, it's a very welcome change or addition to Reeflex. It's making Reeflex Pro Camera a little more pro than it was. So it's a good thing.
Let's say, Greg, real quick, you may not have the answer to this, but I know they basically have a free version with in-app purchase. Do you know what's included in the free in terms of what's like the slow shutter? You have to purchase right now if you want to have that.
So in this version here, Dave, I don't know what is going to be.
I didn't know if they said that with the beta release notes or anything like that.
No, there was no pricing information at all that I really can't say.
Okay.
All I know is that, like you said, you're right. The slow shutter was a paid feature before. Maybe it's going to be the same now. I don't know. We'll find out more on April 2nd, I guess, when it comes actual release. So, but yeah, that's a good question. It'd be nice if they included the bracketing and the focus stacking in the free version, or we'll have to see.
Now, honestly, I can see the bracket. I can see both of those actually being paid because they're extra pro features.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the slow shutter thing, isn't it? Like it was.
I would charge
extra,
for it,
right?
That's added value. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only that, the average or even the average advanced photographer probably won't do either for the exposure bracketing or the focus bracketing, then download it and open it up in another program. Even someone may like, okay, I want to adjust the photo, but I don't necessarily want to go deep into taking multiple photos, stacking it, and manipulating it that way. So to me, that would make a perfect sense for, you want this? Okay, that's a lot of work for us to put in. They're new features, so therefore we're going to make them paid. But I just didn't know if they had any information or in the beta release notes.
Yeah, no, there's nothing in the notes yet.
Okay.
It's going to be a wait and see thing. So, but yeah, that's interesting for sure. So the next thing is burst mode. Now, with burst mode, it's just there. You just hold down the shutter button and you're taking bursts. And where the good stuff is for burst mode is in some of the burst mode settings. So in the screenshot you see now, there's a little white line at the top of the screen. You just pull that down a bit and this little tray comes out, or drawer I call it, comes out, and it's got this gear icon, but it also has your things that were there before, like your flash settings, your timer settings, your grid settings, and your level indicator. So that's where they are. They used to be just across the top of the screen and they were just there. You could see them, you can access them real quick, but now they're kind of hidden in this little drawer, which is kind of nice because it gets them out of the way, and when you need them, they're very easily to get to. But the gear icon, now it takes you to the settings page. And the settings page, just like the old one, is, there was all their socials and, the links to their other apps and information and things like that. It's more like an information page than it is settings per se. But then on that settings page, there's the thing at the top, I think it's called camera settings. And for burst mode, we have some options now. So you can you could just use burst mode, like I said, just tap and hold the screen and it takes a burst. But there's burst on tap. So burst on tap means if you turn this on and you set the number of shots from 2 to 20, you can see there's a scale there, like a rolling dial. It goes from 2 to 20 shots. So you can control how long the burst is. And then you tap the shutter button. Once you've got this set, you tap the shutter button and it'll take the number that you pick. So if you pick 20 shots, it's going to take 20 shots and shut itself off. I think that's pretty cool because sometimes with burst mode, it goes so quick, you only want about 10 or 20 or whatever, and you might end up with 50. It's pretty quick. So that's pretty cool. And then the other button right below that is aggregate burst shots. If you turn that on in your camera roll, that will stack them just like it does in the Photos app. Like they'll be stacked. But if you turn that off, then they're going to be individual photos throughout your camera roll. So now I'm just going to double check my notes here to make sure that's exactly what that is and I don't have it the wrong way. Anyway, yeah, pretty sure that's how it goes. Aggregate burst shots will stack them together in your photos library. So turning it off will display each shot in the burst as a single shot.
That must be default because I just tried it and they were stacked.
Yeah, it probably is. I've been in and out of these settings so many times I forget where it was when I started. Now, there's also a feature there that says lock focus. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you are taking a burst, and I don't know what the best example would be, but anyway, what it does is it locks the focus for the burst. So if you're taking a burst shot of let's use our bee as an example, and the bee flies away, if you can track it good enough without that, if that's off, then the camera will keep focusing on the bee because it's going to pick the subject and focus on it, right? But if you don't need to track anything, then you can, say you want to get a car going by and you want to get it in different places across the frame, then you could lock the focus on the road and it'll, if your subject moves on you like a moving car would, it's not going to adjust focus for that. It's going to stay on focus. And I mean, that's just kind of a silly example, but that's the idea I think behind that is it'll help you.
Well, that's a good feature, Greg, because the iPhone's always trying to focus on everything. So
yeah, sometimes it hunts around, right? And it can be a bit of a pain when you lose focus on something and you don't want to. But I mean, there is autofocus, like focus lock or whatever in these apps and in the Apple camera. But for a burst mode, I think it's a handy little addition, I think. So then we've got a really cool little feature called the magnifier. I call it the magnifier. When you're focusing, when you want to fine tune your focus on something, tap the little magnifying glass down beside the shutter button there, and this little window pops up, and it doesn't have focus peaking on automatically. If you have focus peaking on, which is on the other side of the shutter button, then the green lines come up and just helps you fine tune your focus. So that's just a shot from my desk here at my desk, looking at this old camera that I got from my late aunt. And I use the 2X camera, and I just use that tool to help fine tune the focus where I wanted. And that's how it looks when you're using it. Again, you don't have to use the focus peaking, but they kind of work well together. So yeah, it's another nice addition to Reeflex Pro Camera. Let's see here. I'm just going to look in the comments as I go here. We do have a listener from Australia. Hello, David. Watching live for the first time after many YouTube videos. Okay, well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And it has got to be probably, I'm thinking about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon over there. Something like that. Nice shot at Tim Hortons, Mike says. Yeah, got to have my Timmy's cup here. But it's in that shot there on the screen too. So the next thing is the metadata. In the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you've got your little thumbnail of the last picture you took, right? So you take that. David in Australia says it's 11:40 a.m. tomorrow. That's tomorrow for us. But no, in the image library, when you tap on the thumbnail to bring up to preview the image you just took, there's at the bottom of the screen, there's the usual suspects, like, you can trash it, you can send it to somebody, you can add it as a favorite, but then there's a little eye with a circle in it, and it's a very common little icon where you can see the file info.
That's pretty detailed.
Yeah. So when I did this the first time, I noticed that, the little thing popped up saying the file name, the date and time you took it. It's got the file type there, the phone, the resolution, all this stuff. It's got, the usual information, right? And it'll show it on the map if you geotag your images. But then I seen at the bottom where it said file and there's something was cut off. So I dragged it up, and that's when all this other information came up. And I don't remember seeing that in the older version of Reeflex, and it's very, very informative. Like it's got.
I do like the fact it has the created and modified both on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So because it has there's sections about the image itself, the camera, the lens, and the location, which includes the GPS coordinates and even the elevation. So, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool stuff. I got a couple of EXIF data apps that I can probably dump now that this is all here, because, this is showing a lot of information that, if you're, if you geek out on the metadata, this has got a lot of stuff. And that's another very welcome change to the app. In the gallery view, I don't have a screenshot of it, but in the gallery view at the bottom left, there's a filter icon where you can change the gallery layout to fit 3 across or 5 across each row. And you can filter them out by screenshots or favorites or just show all items. So, a couple of nice little additions there. Then on the bottom right-hand corner, you got the camera icon that gets you back to the good stuff, which is taking more pictures.
Yeah, and Greg, that works with I just took a shot with the native camera and the same information came up. So yeah, you can get rid of those EXIF. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's a really nice addition. I mean, these guys do a really, really good job with their apps, and if this is the direction that they're going to take their other apps, then wow, they're going to be really good. And I'm not trying to downplay all the other apps out there, but there's a reason I've liked this app, and now they've given me reasons to like it even more. But at the bottom of my blog post, it says version 3 is set to release April 2nd. So watch their website. There'll be a link in the show notes for their website, and I'm sure they'll have more details on pricing and confirmation of availability, just in case that release date changes, which it shouldn't, but just in case it does. But yeah, it's a very cool, very fast. It's so snappy in everything that it does. I think the Pro RAWs load, process very quickly, and it's a good camera. I don't know what else to say. It lives in my home row at the bottom of my screen, and yeah, it's going to be my go-to camera app. I mean, yes, I will play around with all these other apps that are out there, and because that's what we do, right? We've got all these apps. Like in my blog post, I put, I still have more camera apps on my iPhone than anyone needs, and then in brackets I said, right, Dwight? Because we've got what did you call that? Something NNA or something?
Camera Apps Anonymous, yeah,
or something like that. Yeah. It's we got plenty. But so I mean, now that's a quick run through of Reeflex Pro Camera 3, and I wish we knew more about some of the things like pricing and things like that, but and what could be available in the free version, but hey, we just don't know. Anything that I've taken with this app so far, not that I haven't had a chance to really get out and test it, because I'm going to try out the focus stacking in the next few days on a macro shot, because I could do that in the house and there's no flowers out yet, but I'm going to give that a shot and see how they work and see how it works. I'll try different numbers of shots in the sequence just to see how it performs, but yeah, it's going to be good. So Dave, you didn't put the beta in, is that correct?
Right. And honestly, even before the beta, I really didn't use it much. Like I've been using Photon Cam, Project Indigo, the built-in app.
Well, we've been overwhelmed.
Yeah, so I'm a lot of it is just me trying to get my feet on these newer apps, and I don't know if for a lot of these settings feel more like, okay, you need to, before you take the photo, make sure you tweak the settings how you like it, and then do the editing after the fact, which doesn't always work great for me.
Yeah, and admittedly, you do like to use live photos,
right?
And that's a function that's not available.
Yeah, it's a big help. It's a big help with the animals, and if I'm taking pictures while I'm running, it's amazing what live photos can do in terms of getting a clear, sharp picture without me having to actually stop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the closest thing that Reeflex will have to that is the burst mode. So, yeah, it's, and that's okay. I mean, and being a live photo.
I mean, there are, well, not only that, but there are, like everyone's been saying, there's so many apps out there. It's so hard to pick. Okay, in my mind, it's almost like, okay, if I want to take this type of shot, I'll use this app. If I want to take this other type of shot, I'll use this other app, because all these apps have their own strengths versus others. And then you get to the point of, okay, well, here's this app that I haven't used for a while. So is this going to replace another app I have with another circumstance, or is this something else that's going to happen? And then at least for me, it gets a little complicated.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. If I used to primarily shoot with reflex only when I was shooting in RAW, but as Dave just alluded to, I found these other apps where I'm getting the computational stuff out of my photos, and I'm really digging that. So I'm editing less, which is kind of weird because I love editing. So if I do shoot with this camera in Bayer RAW, I will edit it. But if I'm shooting it in Pro RAW or, 12 megapixel JPEG or height, I'm going to have processing on it. And I would end up bringing that into, either the No Fusion or the Photon Cam to use that algorithm there to pull that out, because I'm not a Apple processing fan one bit.
Yep. I enjoy the capture process with Reeflex. And, there's, like you say, there's so many other ones that have the, the crunchiness taken out of it and that. So I think I'll probably shoot Pro RAW and just, bring it into like Luminar and Neo and do something that way, because, there's a mystique filter in there that really softens an image. It's almost like the Orton effect. I've been really getting onto that one over the last bunch of months here since I've had Luminar Neo. I wish the mobile app, the Luminar mobile app, had that in it, but it doesn't. It's very stripped down in terms of what it has compared to the desktop version. Not like Lightroom. Lightroom mobile, if you pay for it, it has most of the stuff you have on the desktop, like, masking and things like that. Whereas the Luminar Neo mobile version, there's no masking in it. So other than sky, you could do a sky replacement.
The Mystic filter is going to help soften it up, but you're still going to have to recover your shadows.
Yeah.
The Apple processing crushes.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to find those dark values and lift them in many cases.
Yeah.
If you're sensitive to that.
Yep.
Now, Greg, real quick, you mentioned the Orton effect, and I'm not familiar with that phrase, so I had to look it up. I didn't know if other people would also
kind of
not
a soft
be
blur,
too familiar. Okay.
Kind of a soft blur glow kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I do, and I learned this from a guy named Jim Nix on YouTube. He puts a lot of Luminar Neo videos out. With the desktop version of Luminar Neo, you can use a luminance mask to pick, like, say, just the bright areas of an image. So in some winter shots that I've done this year, I use that luminance mask to pick some of the brighter areas of the photo, and I use that mystique filter on those bright spots only, whereas the shadows didn't have that so much. And it just kind of gives it a nice glow without putting the glow on everything. Like, it just makes the bright parts glow, because your eyes are drawn to a bright area of an image, right? So with that mystique filter used on the brighter areas of the frame, it just, I don't know, it just does something magical to the image, in my opinion. It just really makes it cool looking.
Yeah, Dave, it's a photography post-processing technique that creates a dreamy, ethereal, and soft glowing image by blending a sharp image with a blurred, overexposed version. Then you can kind of control, how much of that you use to overexpose it.
Yep, it's a pretty interesting effect, and I think you can do it with Snapseed to a certain point with the glow filter. You can use that in Snapseed and kind of get the same effect. The actual bona fide Orton effect is probably a series of things that you would do in Photoshop. Would that be a fair statement, Dwight? Or is there basically a filter that just does it?
No. There's Orton effect it's under the blur category, and Orton is one of those.
Oh yeah, okay.
But yeah, Photoshop's just so accurate with that, and then being able to work in, not a global. It doesn't have to be global. And I think kind of what you're talking about earlier, picking out some of the highlights and working with those. But you can pick tonal values. A lot of times when I edit in Photoshop, I'll take lights 1 through 5. So if I click on lights, that's lights 1. That's the lightest of the lights.
Right.
And I can work within that. And then I'll go to lights 2, and then I can work, or I can pick one of those or 2 of them that would make most sense for that filter. So so I'm not doing a global adjustment. I'm working within specific tone ranges, and Photoshop's really good at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen your tool palettes in Photoshop, and it's like they're
pretty involved.
It's like a mechanic's toolbox in a shop.
Yeah.
There's all these drawers, and they're just full of things.
Oh yeah, I'm too far gone.
Yeah, and Greg, when you mentioned the Orton effect, I also looked it up too. Someone put a technique that's a step-by-step on not necessarily using the built-in filter, but to say, okay, step 1, select the image and you open it, and then you duplicate it, and then you blur it, and then you deal with the blend mode, and you filter out the shadows, and you put some gain back, and you do this, and there's let's see here, how many steps? 8 steps altogether, but each step is like tons of work in between each step.
Wow, that's
better
crazy.
Just to use a slider.
Yeah, but they were trying to show it how to use an Orton effect without seeming amateurish. So I'm thinking like, don't rely on the filters. I'll show you how to do it from scratch.
Yeah,
and it's like,
and there's different blur effects too, not just Orton. There's soft blur. There's all different kinds of blurs you can use.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, if there's any no more questions from our chat about Reeflex, or Dave, if you have any more thoughts on what you'd like to see or whatever.
I'm also interested when I'm assuming this close with beta and everything, it seems pretty stable, and they just may be tweaking some things or making sure there's nothing weird going on before they do the final release. So I'm just kind of curious to see what it's going to be like when they're done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, Greg, that out of all of the camera apps, and I'll echo what you said earlier, is that the way this thing is laid out is in my opinion, the most simple out of all of them.
Yeah. I mean, before Reflex came along, I was halide. I mean, everything I shot was with halide. But the manual controls in halide, I just find them to be too out of the way. They're not in your face where they need to be, because I mean, these apps are, they're great in auto, but they should be really good in manual. Pro Camera has some, great manual functions as well, but I find it to be maybe a little too feature rich for my liking. There's a lot of people that use these apps faithfully. I think it's Wilbur in our group that he's on the Halide 3 beta. And so
I'm on that as well, Greg.
Are you?
Yeah, the manual settings are a lot better on this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you essentially you select a button in the upper right, but you remember we used to have to slide over from the right to get the manual settings, and then it was on the top and the bottom. It's still on the top and bottom, I think. Yeah. But it's much more intuitive.
Yeah, but when Reflex arrived on the scene and I tried it, I thought, wow, this is so easy to use. It was just so intuitive. I just loved how they designed it. So, and this new design, it's just, to me, I mean, it just makes it even better. Steve and Justin, Southampton here, not too far from here, a great discussion. I'm going to try it out and compare it to Pro Camera, which I use when shooting Pro Raw. So careful, Steven. I mean, I think you might like it. You might have.
I love Pro Camera too, Steven.
Yeah, it is a great camera. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But I mean,
and that one too, I believe, and Steven, if I'm not mistaken, you can take some of the Apple processing out of the Pro Raw files as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a lot of them coming out with that, like Moments Camera app does it and whatnot. But But yeah,
I think Pro Cameras had it for a while.
Oh yeah, Steven says
they were early adopters of that.
Yes, it does it. So anyway, well, yeah, this was a great discussion on this preview of Reeflex Pro Camera 3. Again, I wish we knew more about pricing, but we don't know anything about that yet. But look for it on April 2nd. And I'm glad they picked the 2nd and not the 1st, because too many jokes about April 1st. But no, so thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat tonight, and thank you for listening in the podcast app. Again, these pictures were in the on the screen when you listen to your podcast. Now, a question came up from the YouTube channel in, I think it was the last video, and it just come up today, as a matter of fact. There was somebody said, why have a podcast on YouTube if there's no video? Well, there's 2 feeds on YouTube for the podcast. Mm-hmm. One is just the podcast itself, and there's no pictures or nothing on that. But the other one is indeed the video. You have to go to the live section on our YouTube channel, and that's where all these live streams, they live. That's where they are. I don't know. Maybe it was a mistake putting a podcast feed on there,
Greg,
but it's just that every time.
Honestly, it's not a mistake, because when you look at the breakdown of how people listen to podcasts, Apple Podcast, at least for iOS, is of course the most popular. But one of the more popular ones is YouTube. And it's not watching the video like someone watching the replay of the live. It's literally, they don't have a podcast player, or they have an Android, or they're doing something to have play in the background. They're just listening to it on YouTube. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do that. I would use the podcast player I use, but there's tons of people, or if it's something that I want to see a video of, that's different.
Yeah.
But for audio only, it is popular, and it's out there as an option. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing. Everyone does different ways, and as at one time, some kids say, they probably don't say it anymore, you don't want to yuck anyone's yum. So if if it helps someone to have it out there, great. If it isn't for you, it's not for you.
Yeah. Well, most of our listeners are on the Apple Podcast app. I think Overcast, is the second highest as far as podcast apps. And then, you get
I was Overcast forever, and then I went back to Apple because it syncs with my watch a lot better.
Yeah. And the Apple Podcasts app is now introducing, I think, with 26.4 video podcasts right in the podcast app. So have to look into that.
Spotify does.
Spotify does it?
At least on one podcast that I know about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what kind of technology that is going to entail, whether it's going to be, whether we could put this YouTube video feed into that or whatever. Yeah. But because I edit the audio to clean up, make us, adjust the levels and all that stuff, right? I don't know. I probably won't be doing that. But anyway, great show, guys. Looking forward to seeing what this app does when it comes out as a full release. And I guess on that note, we'll see everybody in the next one.
Somebody come join us for the next one. We'd love to have you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, by all means. Hit us up. Take care, everybody.
Have a great one.
Good night.